You've been discarded. The narcissist has moved on. They look happy with their new supply, posting stories, living their best life, and you're left wondering if you even mattered at all. But here's what Carl Jung discovered, what the narcissist will never tell you. Behind that mask of confidence, they're hiding a collapse so terrifying they can't even look at it themselves. This isn't about revenge or getting them back. This is about understanding the psychological prison they built for themselves the moment they hurt you. Jung said narcissism isn't self-love. It's a defense mechanism against a void they refuse to face. You think they're celebrating their freedom right now? Jung's research reveals they're experiencing a psychological starvation they will never ever admit. They can't, because the moment they do, the entire illusion shatters. And here's something that will shift your entire perspective. That new person they're parading around, they're not a replacement. They're a life raft. And the narcissist is drowning. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will completely reframe how you see this betrayal. Let's start with the most painful question. Why did they target you specifically? This wasn't random. The narcissist didn't choose you because you were weak. They chose you because you had something they desperately needed, but could never create for themselves. Light. Empaths carry a quality that narcissists can only borrow, never generate. You feel deeply, you connect authentically, you reflect the best version of people back to them. For the narcissist, you were like staring into a mirror that showed them who they could have been if they hadn't abandoned their true self decades ago. And here's what makes it even more specific. You probably have a history of being the caretaker, the healer, the one who sees potential in people. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you learned to read emotional temperatures, where you became skilled at managing other people's feelings. The narcissist has radar for this. They can sense it within the first few conversations. They're looking for someone who will do the emotional labor they're incapable of doing themselves. Carl Jung talked about something he called the persona. It's the mask we wear in society, the version of ourselves we present to the world. But here's the critical difference. Healthy people have a persona, but they also have depth beneath it. They know who they are when the mask comes off. They have private thoughts, authentic feelings, real values that exist, whether anyone is watching or not. The narcissist, they became only the mask. There's nothing underneath anymore. The real person died a long time ago, probably in childhood, when they learned that being authentic meant being rejected or hurt. So they built this shiny, perfect exterior and convinced themselves that's who they really are. When you entered their life, you did something dangerous. You started to see through the mask, not because you were trying to expose them, but because genuine connection requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is the narcissist's worst nightmare. Every time you showed them real love, real acceptance, you were unconsciously asking them to be real too. And they can't do that. The moment they become real, they have to face the emptiness they've been running from their entire life. Think about how they reacted when you tried to have a deep conversation. When you asked them about their childhood, their fears, their dreams beyond the surface level, they probably deflected, changed the subject, or turned it back to something superficial. Or worse, they gave you rehearsed answers that sounded deep but had no real emotion behind them. That's because they've been performing for so long, they don't know how to stop. The script is all they have left. So what did they do? They hurt you. They discarded you. They made you feel like you were the problem. But Jung would tell you this was never about you. It was about them protecting the only identity they have left, the mask. Because if you saw behind it and still loved them, that would mean they'd have to acknowledge there's something behind the mask worth loving. And they've spent so long believing there isn't. They can't risk finding out they were wrong. Now let's talk about what happens in the narcissist's mind after they discard you. This is where it gets fascinating and honestly, a little dark. You'd think they feel guilt, right? They hurt someone who loved them, someone who gave them everything. But guilt isn't what they feel. They feel shame. And Jung taught us these are completely different psychological experiences. Guilt says, I did something bad. Guilt is actually healthy because it's specific. It's about an action, a choice, something that can be repaired. Guilt leads to apologies, to change, to growth. When you feel guilt, you can say, I made a mistake, I hurt someone, and I need to make it right. Guilt keeps you connected to your humanity. But shame says, I am bad. Shame isn't about what you did, it's about who you are at your core. And shame is unbearable. It's not something you fix, it's something you hide. The narcissist can't process guilt because that would require them to see themselves as a person who made a mistake. And their entire identity is built on being perfect, flawless, beyond criticism. Admitting fault would crack the foundation of everything they've built. So instead, that feeling gets transformed into shame. But they can't sit with shame either, because shame would destroy the mask. So they do something else. They project it. They take that unbearable feeling of being fundamentally flawed, and they throw it onto you. This is why they'll rewrite history. Suddenly, you weren't the person who loved them unconditionally. You were controlling, crazy, too sensitive, too needy. They'll tell anyone who listens that you were the problem. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. And here's the twisted part. They actually start to believe it, because believing you are bad is the only way they can keep believing they are good. Jung called this shadow projection. The parts of ourselves we can't accept, we see in other people. And the narcissist's shadow is massive. It's everything they've denied about themselves for years. All the rage, the emptiness, the fear, the inadequacy. They've shoved it so deep down that it comes out sideways, projected onto everyone around them. Let me take you deeper into what Jung called the void. Imagine you're looking into a mirror, and the mirror is reflecting back all the qualities you wish you had. Kindness, empathy, the ability to love without conditions. For the narcissist, you were that mirror. But they didn't just see those qualities. They convinced themselves those qualities were theirs because you were reflecting them. It's like borrowing someone's light and forgetting it's not coming from you. When you leave, when the empath finally walks away, that mirror breaks. And suddenly the narcissist is standing in a dark room with no reflection at all. They look inside themselves for that light, and it's not there. It never was. What Jung discovered is that narcissists don't have an inflated sense of self. They have no sense of self. The grandiosity, the arrogance, the constant need for admiration, it's all compensation for an internal emptiness so profound, it's terrifying. This is the void. It's not sadness. It's not loneliness. It's a black hole where a person should be. And when the empath leaves, the narcissist feels this void opening up. They feel it threatening to swallow them whole. But they can't admit this. They can't say, I feel empty without you, because that would mean admitting they needed you. And need is weakness. Need is vulnerability. Need is everything the mask was built to hide. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the process of individuation. It's the journey of becoming a whole person, of integrating all the parts of yourself, even the uncomfortable ones. It requires you to sit with darkness, to face your shadow, to acknowledge that you're capable of both good and bad. The narcissist never completed this process. They got stuck. They chose the mask over the journey. And now they're trapped in a half-life, never fully present, never fully real. So what do? They run, they find new supply, and they find it fast. You probably saw it. Maybe they had someone lined up before they even ended things with you. Maybe they were on dating apps the same week. Maybe they introduced someone new to their friends and family within days. And it gutted you. It made you feel replaceable, insignificant, like everything you shared meant nothing. But here's what Jung would want you to understand. That speed, that's not confidence. That's panic. The narcissist isn't moving on because they're over you. They're moving on because they can't afford to be alone. Being alone means facing the void, and facing the void means the mask falls. So they panic buy emotional survival. They grab the nearest person who can serve as a mirror, who can reflect back the image they need to keep the illusion alive. Think about it. Have you ever seen a narcissist be single for long? Have you ever seen them take time to heal, to reflect, to work on themselves? No, because they can't. The gap between relationships is too dangerous. It's like they're holding their breath underwater. They can do it for a little while, but eventually they'll drown. So they surface as fast as possible, gasping for the next source of supply. And that new person? They think they won the lottery. The narcissist is love-bombing them, giving them all the attention and affection they gave you at the beginning. They're hearing the same lines you heard, the same promises, the same intensity. But it's not real. It's a performance. The narcissist is trying desperately to patch the leak in their ego. They're using this new person the same way they used you. As a mirror, as a reflection, as proof they're not empty inside. But here's the thing Jung understood that the narcissist never will. You can't fill a void with other people. You can only fill it by turning inward, by doing the painful work of becoming whole. And the narcissist will never do that work. They'll jump from person to person, relationship to relationship, desperately trying to outrun the emptiness. And every time, it will catch up to them. Every relationship will follow the same pattern. Idealization, devaluation, discard, repeat. Now let's talk about the smear campaign. This is one of the most painful parts of narcissistic abuse. The narcissist doesn't just move on. They actively destroy your reputation. They tell people you were the toxic one, the abusive one, the crazy one. They twist stories, manipulate facts, and play the victim so convincingly that people who once knew, you start questioning your character. It feels like being erased. It feels like losing your mind. But Jung would tell you this is actually predictable. It's not personal, even though it feels that way. It's a psychological necessity for the narcissist. Here's why. In order for them to maintain their identity as the good person, someone else has to be the bad person. It's called splitting. The narcissist sees the world in black and white. There are good objects and bad objects. And they must be the good object. Always. When you were serving their needs, you were the good object. You were perfect, amazing, the best thing that ever happened to them. But the moment you stopped serving their needs, whether by setting boundaries, calling out their behavior, or simply existing as your own person, you became the bad object. And once you're categorized as bad, they have to make sure everyone else sees you that way too. Why? Because if people knew the truth, if people knew you were actually kind, loving, and healthy, then the narcissist's story falls apart. If you're not the villain, then maybe they are, and they can't handle that. So they get ahead of the narrative. They tell everyone their version first, and they tell it with so much emotion, so much conviction, that people believe them. They'll cry. They'll show screenshots taken out of context. They'll share private moments twisted to make you look unstable. This is the shadow projection at its most destructive. Everything they accuse you of is actually a confession. They call you manipulative. They're the manipulator. They call you selfish. They're incapable of seeing beyond their own needs. They call you crazy. They're the ones detached from reality. Jung said we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. and the narcissist sees you through the lens of their own darkness. But here's where the story takes a turn. There's a moment coming that the narcissist can't escape. Jung called it mortification. It's a term from alchemy, his favorite metaphor for psychological transformation. Mortification means death, but not physical death. It's the death of the false self. It's the moment when the illusions can't hold anymore. For the narcissist, mortification happens when they realize the empath is truly gone, not physically gone. They can handle that. They already replaced you, remember? But psychologically gone, energetically gone. When you stop caring, when you stop checking their social media, when you stop hoping they'll realize what they lost, when you stop giving them any energy at all, positive or negative, that's when the narcissist hits their psychological rock bottom. Because here's what they needed from you even more than admiration or validation. They needed your reaction. They needed to know they still had power over you, even if that power was making you cry, making you angry, making you obsess over them. As long as you were thinking about them, they still existed in your mind. And that meant they mattered. That meant they were real. But when you become indifferent, when you genuinely move on and build a life where they're not even a footnote, that terrifies them. Because indifference is the opposite of love. Hate still connects you to someone. Anger still connects you. But indifference is erasure. And for someone whose entire existence depends on external validation, being erased is the ultimate death. Consider a narrative illustration Jung often referenced in his work. A man spends his entire life building a monument to himself. He carefully crafts every detail, makes sure every angle is perfect, invites people from all over to admire it. But there's one person who walked away without looking back, and that person's absence haunts him more than all the admirers combined, because that one person saw through the monument to the emptiness behind it, and their indifference confirmed what he always feared, that the monument was all he had. Jung believed that mortification was necessary for growth. The false self has to die so the true self can emerge. But most narcissists never get there. They can't. Because getting there would require them to sit in the void, to face the shame, to admit they built their entire life on a lie. And that's too much. So instead, they just find another mirror, another empath, another person to temporarily fill the emptiness. But here's what I want you to understand, and this is the resolution, the piece that brings all of this together. You were never responsible for fixing them. You were never going to be the one who loved them enough to heal them, because healing requires self-awareness, and self-awareness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the one thing the narcissist will never allow. Your sensitivity, your empathy, your ability to see the good in people, these aren't weaknesses, these are strengths. The narcissist targeted you because you had what they lacked, but they could never take that from you. They could hurt you. They could make you doubt yourself. They could try to convince you that caring deeply is a flaw, but they couldn't destroy your essence, that core part of you that feels, that connects, that loves. It's still there, maybe bruised, maybe hidden, but not broken. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You've been given a painful gift, the gift of seeing the narcissist's true face. And now you get to choose. You can stay in the story they wrote for you, the one where you're broken and flawed and unworthy. Or you can write a new story, one where you walked through fire and came out stronger, one where you learned that love shouldn't hurt, one where you discovered that the right person won't require you to shrink yourself to make them feel bigger. The narcissist's greatest fear isn't that you'll expose them, it's that you'll heal. Because your healing proves their entire worldview wrong. They told themselves you needed them, that you couldn't survive without them, that you'd come crawling back. But when you heal, when you rebuild, when you become even more yourself than you were before, you become proof that they were never necessary. You become the evidence that love doesn't require suffering. So let them keep the mask. Let them keep jumping from mirror to mirror. Let them keep running from the void. That's their prison, not yours. Your job now is to turn inward, to do the work Jung spent his life teaching, to integrate your shadow, to face your own pain, not the pain they caused, but the pain that made you vulnerable to them in the first place. Because here's the final truth. Empaths don't attract narcissists by accident. Somewhere there's a wound in you that resonated with the wound in them. Maybe you learned in childhood that love requires sacrifice. Maybe you learned that your needs don't matter as much as other people's needs. Maybe you learned that being good means tolerating bad behavior. Maybe you were praised for being understanding, for giving people second chances, for seeing the best in everyone, even when they showed you their worst. Whatever it is, that's the work. That's where your power is. Not in understanding the narcissist better. You already understand them. You've spent enough time analyzing their behavior, trying to make sense of the senseless. The real work is understanding yourself. Why did you stay as long as you did? What red flags did you ignore? What part of you believed you could save them? The narcissist will never change, but you can. You can learn to set boundaries without guilt. You can learn to recognize red flags early. You can learn that walking away isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. And most importantly, you can learn that you are not a mirror for anyone else's ego. You are a whole, complete, valuable person, with or without someone reflecting that back to you. Jung talked about something called the transcendent function. It's the ability to hold two opposing truths at the same time. You can acknowledge that the narcissist is deeply damaged and also acknowledge that their damage is not your responsibility. You can feel compassion for their inner emptiness and also protect yourself from their toxicity. You can understand why they are the way they are and still choose to walk away. This isn't contradiction. This is maturity. So here's what I want you to take from this. The narcissist isn't hiding their happiness after hurting you. They're hiding their terror. The terror that without you, they have to face themselves. And that's a confrontation they'll avoid for the rest of their life. But you don't have to hide. You get to heal. You get to grow. You get to become the fullest version of yourself. And that journey, that painful, beautiful journey, is something the narcissist will never experience. Not because they can't, but because they won't. And that's the difference between you and them. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, it's a superpower. And the world needs more people like you, not fewer. The narcissist tried to dim your light because they couldn't generate their own, but you're still here. You're still shining. And that's everything. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.